Still Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
We had a very, I thought, kind of happy story last week about breast cancer with
Yes.
Jenna Fisher. This one's a little bit more sad, actually, but I think there's some things to learn about it. And this is about the MTV VJ, Ananda Lewis, opening up about some of her regrets regarding her breast cancer diagnosis. And she was on CNN talking about this, and as I said, it just really kind of bummed me out. She's kind of in a difficult way, I think. I mean, she has a very good attitude about it, and she's very open about it, which I think is great because it can potentially help people. So she's currently 51 years old. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019, so I think she was around 46. And at the time, she was diagnosed as stage 3. And remember, we were talking about stages last week, and stage 1 is obviously very early. Stage 3 is definitely a more advanced cancer, but not as bad as stage 4.
Yeah.
And at the time, her doctors were recommending her to get a mastectomy to remove the cancer. And she actually refused that. She opted for going for a combination of alternative therapies as well as some form of chemotherapy. It didn't really say exactly what she was taking, but some form of chemotherapy. And she said that she responded pretty well at first, or at least that's what she was told. But unfortunately, about 1 year ago, they diagnosed her with stage 4 breast cancer and saying the cancer had basically spread throughout her body.
What?
So, yeah. So that's not necessarily a good thing. Well, flat out not a good thing.
Yeah.
Not a good thing at all. And so, and she was, she was very kind of emotional about it, and it was just honestly emotional to watch it. But she was talking about something else that is even more tragic. Lewis said that she actually had refused to get mammograms because she was worried about the fear of the radiation. And so she didn't get mammograms, even though she was kind of at that age.
How did she finally get diagnosed with breast cancer?
She felt a lump.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and by that time, it's so late.
Yeah, that's an important. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is a very, very important factor when it comes to breast cancer. And I think we briefly talked about this last week. That you can't just rely on self-breast exams. You need to find breast cancer early, and by the time you feel a lump, that is a more advanced breast cancer for sure. As I said, I applaud her for opening up about this. I'm sure it's very hard for her to say these things and talk about, well, I wish I'd done things differently. But, I think the upside is that, I think people can learn from this. When you see somebody high profile like that talk about, this is what I did, I wish I did that. I think it hits home pretty hard. And there's some very important points here, and some of this will kind of have some crossover from last week, but this is just so important. I think it's worth talking about again. Obviously the most important thing, getting mammograms, absolutely critical. You hit the nail on the head that, she didn't notice that she had breast cancer or even go seek any treatment until she felt a lump. And by that time, you're talking about a more advanced cancer. And there's a lot of data to show that if you get mammograms regularly as recommended, that there's actually a significant decrease in mortality for those patients who get cancer, meaning women who get mammograms and women who don't. If those two women get cancer, the person who get mammograms is going to have a much better diagnosis because they're going to catch it. It's like a 40% decrease. I think I pulled that study. Travis, I always like to throw these studies up just so people can, and there's a lot of these studies, but this is one talking specifically about decreases in mortality if you get your mammograms. So she had stage 3 cancer, and last week we were talking about Jenna Fisher had stage 1. It makes a big difference, the stage of the cancer diagnosis, because that weighs heavily on the survival rate.
Okay.
So stage 1 survival rate's 5 years if it's treated, with conventional therapy is 100%. Stage 2, it drops to like a range of 90 to 99%. For stage 3 cancer, it starts dropping fairly precipitously. You're talking about a 66 to 95-ish% survival rate at 5 years. But when it hits stage 4, that's when they say that breast cancer is incurable, and the 5-year survival rate drops down to about 30%.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a pretty insane drop when you go from that 3 to 4. Obviously, it is just so important.
She's going to be going down a long road.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough.
What's going to feel like a long road.
It's tough when it spreads out into other places. You start to have like symptoms from it, like your life starts to get affected, and your quality of life starts to diminish a bit, just depending on where it's gone.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important in this is, the part where she was refused treatment, and no one can say. I mean, it's entirely possible that if she had done exactly what the doctors said, that maybe the outcome would have been the same. But there's a very decent likelihood that if she had done the treatment as they had suggested, that it may have not gone from that stage 3 to stage 4.
Yeah.
And that that makes a huge difference. Doing alternative therapy for cancer never tends to end well. I mean, there is a ton of data to support that. Throw up that second study trial list. This is just one study. There's tons of these out there if you want to look it up. This one, it looked at several cancers, specifically to breast cancer. For those people that chose alternative therapy versus conventional therapy.
What's like an alternative therapy versus?
It's like the homeopathic stuff, there's a whole laundry list, like changing your diet and eating, all natural foods and,
right.
Things like that, as opposed to surgery,
and
chemotherapy,
medicine.
radiation. 5.7 times increased risk of death from breast cancer if you do alternative therapy versus conventional.
Okay.
So, obviously wish her the best in her fight against cancer. And, crazy things have happened. I mean, they say stage 4 is incurable, but I mean, you always hear every once in a while of these stories where somebody gets on some new therapy that
works for
makes
them.
a big difference. And,
Yeah.
Definitely wish her the best and honestly applaud her for, having the courage to talk about her journey with breast cancer. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure it's
it's
very
rough.
hard to do and say things like, I made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But if it helps somebody else down the road, then it's not totally in vain, right?
Yeah.
So take home, get your mammograms. I mean, when it comes to breast cancer, I just can't say that. Getting your mammograms and knowing your family history is important. If you have a strong family history of breast cancer, like maybe your grandmother had it, your mom had it, especially if they had it when they were young, you need to be on top of that from a very early age, like even as early as like in your 20s, talking to your doctor about your risks.
Yeah.
Because
my lady doctor knows my grandma had it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
You're still pretty young. Yeah, you should.
My grandma didn't get it till she was like in her 70s.
So you got a few years before you start doing mammograms.
At least till 70.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, it's like 30, right? Not 30,
40.
40.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. You get to these ages. I was at the age where I had to go and get like scopes. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, I don't want to do this. And I can, I mean, it's not the same as getting a mammogram, of course, but just getting these ages where you got to start doing things, and it's hard to get into that routine of, I got to like do like adult doctor stuff now.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes
uncomfortable things.
Huh?
Uncomfortable things.
Right,
that are
exactly. Yeah,
preventative.
uncomfortable things you don't want to do. But I mean, I'm a research guy, man. I look at the data, and the data shows that doing these things absolutely can save your life.
Preventative health.
Preventative health. You know that? You're like the master of health.
That's what my degree's in, pretty much.
I know, right? You should be teaching me stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we wish her the best, and hopefully we'll see a good outcome for her.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think taking those things that she said to heart is important. So.
Agreed.